Is Hinduism polytheism? Is it about reincarnation? Is it paganism? Is it inconsistent with monotheism? How does it relate to Buddhism? And what is this whole non-dualism thing? There are so many questions about Hinduism that it is widely misunderstood, not only in the West, but even in the East, and even sometimes in India itself. So let's look at it closely to debunk some of the misconceptions. So in order to do that, first we have to understand the word religion itself. Religion etymologically means connecting to the source. So when man started exploring and wondering about the universe and the source of all the various aspects of creation that he was perceiving, first it was natural to go into polytheism, because man observed so many forces of nature, whether it's the lightning or the thunderbolt or the oceans or the trees. And also man believed in spirits, ancestors, and so all these various forces, spirits, became gods with a small g. And this kind of worship of various gods became prevalent in many cultures all across the world. And then it evolved into the inquiry of what is the one common source from which all these various forces of nature come. And man posited, therefore, an almighty God through both inquiry and through revelation. And revelation can happen, of course, through mystical insights that certainly many great prophets and seers had, to the one common source from which all these various forces of nature come about. And so that led to monotheism, or one almighty God. But still, there was a dualism in that monotheism, because there is the difference between God and his creation. And the creation, including man himself, is separate from God, and therefore man took a worshipful attitude towards this almighty God. But then the ultimate inquiry, which is also the ultimate mystical insight, is the question as to, are we separate from the almighty God? Even if we take the inquiry in this manner and ask, what is the material from which God made this creation? Obviously, it has to be God himself, because if God is almighty, there is nothing other than God to make the creation out of. It's not like a potter making a pot where the material for the pot is available outside the potter. Here, there is no material outside God in order for God to make creation, because God alone is at the beginning of time, presumably, if we take a monotheistic viewpoint. And therefore, even by this inquiry, or directly through a mystical insight, many came to a realization that not only is there one God, but all of creation is a part of God. And therefore, this led to what is known as non-dualism. So these are basically the three primary strands of religion, we can say. Polytheism, where there are many gods; monotheism, where there is one almighty God who is separate from creation; and non-dualism, where there is no separation and God alone is. Now, if you look at it historically, polytheism was very prevalent in all the ancient cultures, whether it's Greece or Egypt or India too. And then the evolution to monotheism is found in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. But there is monotheistic philosophies in India too, with the dualism of creator and the creation. And finally, non-dualism, which is the insight that there is nothing other than truth or God, the source being the only truth that there is. This is, of course, very clearly found in India. It is found both in terms of Vedanta as well as Buddhism. So now, seeing in this slide, the question comes, which category does Hinduism fall into? Because it's easy to categorize other religions. As we saw, Buddhism sort of predominantly falls into non-dualism, though there are some elements there in terms of worshipping different deities and so on, but still it's largely non-dualism. The Abrahamic religions fall in monotheism, and the ancient religions of the Greeks, the Egyptians, and also many tribals, they all fall in polytheism or paganism. Now, interestingly, Hinduism encompasses all three: polytheism, monotheism, and non-dualism. The word Hindu itself is, first of all, not a religious connotation, unlike Buddhism or Christianity, because the word Hindu comes from the same root as India, and therefore it denotes a geographical region and not a religion per se. And this geographical region and the systems of religious thought it yielded has all three. There are polytheistic philosophies, which are still found in some parts of India and other regions of people who claim to be Hindu. There is monotheistic philosophies, as we already saw, where there is a strong adherence to one God and a dualistic worship of the one God. And there is, of course, non-dualism, which is called as Advaita in Sanskrit, which is very much a core part of Hinduism. So all these three categories find their place in Hinduism, and this is exactly the reason why it's hard to bucketize Hinduism and why people are confused, including many practicing Hindus. So, seen in this light, we can see that Hinduism is not in conflict with polytheism, with monotheism, or with non-dualism, while making it clear that the highest understanding is non-dualism. And the other important thing to point out is, even in monotheistic religions, the greatest mystics, including, for instance, Jesus Christ himself, expressed non-dualism through subtle pointers. So, for example, when he says the kingdom of heaven is within you, that is a pointer away from monotheistic dualism to non-dualism. So, and this is found in many other mystics too, like Rumi and many others. So, going back to what is called Hinduism, it is consistent with all three. It gives space for polytheism, which is, of course, a primitive form of religion. It gives space for monotheism, which is dualism, found in many other religions, as we said. And it, of course, gives the highest space for non-dualism, which is the understanding that God pervades all of universe and is found in everyone. So if this clarity is there, then we can see that the word Hindu itself is a bit of a, I wouldn't say misnomer, but confusing term, because it doesn't mean anything. It really depends on what one practices or what one sees. One can fall into any of these categories, but the highest pointer is non-dualism.